This nugget is specifically focused on the changes to the PMP exam for the 2011 version of the exam. Specific changes made to the PMP are primarily based on a role-based study conducted by PMI, and as a result of the findings from this role-based study, PMI have gone back and examined pieces of the PMP exam, the format of the exam, and the format of specific questions, and modified them to make the questions more role-based, more practical application, more consistent with the day-to-day interactions of a project manager than it was in previous releases. So overall, I have to say the changes for the PMP for the 2011 for all new exams taken after September the 1st of 2011, based on the role-based exam, it is a positive improvement on the PMP. As a result of changing the format of the exam and changing the format of the questions to be more role-based, more day in the life of project management, it will make the questions more relevant to you taking the exam. So for some of you who have been stressing this as, oh, I was a little late getting started with my PMP, I wished I could have finished and gotten my PMP before the exam changes, get rid of those concerns. I really believe you will find this new release of the exam, I'm not going to say easier because you haven't experienced the previous release, but you will find this release of the exam to be very consistent with what you do in your day-to-day. This exam is still based on the PMBOK guide, 4th edition, the one that was issued in 2008. So for those of you who have been involved with PMI and have the current PMBOK guide, the 4th edition, it's been around since 2008, the basis for the exam has not changed. The big thing that's changed is what I already said. It is now a role-based exam. It has less theoretical, academic type questions and more day in the life of type questions. The other significant change that they've done in this release of the exam is they have eliminated specific questions focused on professionalism and social responsibility. This aspect of project management is now integrated into all of the exam areas, and I'm going to say all of the exam questions, but the concept of a specific question related, if I were a professional project manager, or more appropriately phrased, if I signed, and we know we do still have to sign the PMI Code of Ethics, if I signed and followed the PMI Code of Ethics, what would I do? There's none of those specific professionalism and social responsibility questions. The professionalism and social responsibility is baked into all of the questions. Again, not a bad thing. We're all professionals. We all deliver our projects with social responsibility, i.e. the day in the life of. So again, not a change to the exam you should be worried about. And generally speaking, PMI says about 30% of the total exam, i.e. 30% of the questions have changed. 30%. It's a significant number, but it's not a huge number. And again, I think the key is those questions have changed to be more applicable to the day in the life of. And the other change, if you call it a change, is the exam is now based on 5 domains: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. The 5 domains of the project management lifecycle, recognizing that this 6th domain from previous releases of the exams is now integrated. So let's talk in a little more detail about these changes, what is involved with how the 2011 exam is structured. As I said, the 2011 version of the exam has been changed to be role-based. The exam has been updated based on the PMI's role delineation study, or you'll often hear it referred to as just the RDS. What is the RDS? It's a survey that PMI does every 5 to 7 years, so this is not something new. This is not something that PMI just did in 2010 and delivered and published through 2011 with the update to the PMP. It's something they do on a regular basis, and they conduct this role delineation study to ensure that PMI is aware of and that the PMBOK and the PMI principles follow contemporary practices, i.e. what we do today in the day-to-day life of a project manager. It's based on ensuring that PMI continues to follow practical project management evolution. We're not managing projects the same way today that we did in the 1980s. We have better tools, we have better processes, we have better information. So therefore, again, this role delineation study modernizes the PMI PMBOK guide itself, and in this particular occurrence has modernized the exam that it's based on the experiences of global PMs. Why did they do this? Because the updates to the PMP will provide a more meaningful certification. People coming out and saying, I have my PMP, have always been well recognized in the industry. The PMP, as you know from taking this Nugget series, is the worldwide standard in project management certification. PMI strives to keep it current and relevant, and by these updates we've already discussed, it is going to maintain its relevance, and as a matter of fact, by having it based on today's contemporary best practices, your certification will have more meaning, more relevance, and more impact on employers and progressive employers that says, hey, you just got your PMP, I know the PMP has changed, and I know this PMP says you know how to manage projects today. So yes, you're the person I want working for my organization. The other significant change in this release is that the professionalism and social responsibility is now integrated. Again, as said, it's more focused on the day-to-day life of a PM. It's fully integrated into, which makes, again, the exam more relevant. As already discussed, that doesn't mean as PMPs we no longer have to follow the PMI Code of Ethics. The PMI Code of Ethics is still relevant. It's just that it's now fully integrated into the phases of the life cycle. Now, this Nugget series still has a specific nugget related to professionalism and social responsibility. Why have I maintained this nugget on professionalism and social responsibility, recognizing that the exam fully integrates it into the day-to-day life? I've left this out as a separate nugget to drive home the importance of, to speak specifically to the professionalism and social responsibility elements of project management, to make sure that you're aware of the PMI Code of Ethics. I believe that if I was to try to bake professionalism and social responsibility into the other nuggets in this series, into scope management, into budget management, into schedule management, into human resource management, I would become a repeating record. When you're doing your scope management, you need to ensure that you're adhering to all appropriate laws. When you're doing human resource management, you need to ensure that you're adhering to etc., etc., etc. So although professionalism and social responsibility is fully integrated into our day-to-day life, I believe that leaving it as a separate discussion area for this training series, not your day-to-day execution, but leaving it as a separate nugget for this training series, allows you to focus on what PMI expects of you in the professionalism and social responsibility. And then with that understanding of what PMI expects, you will be better equipped to answer the specific questions on scope, time, cost, quality, etc., etc., as related to or as discussed in the 5 domains of the exam areas itself. So recognizing that those are the 2 changes in this release of the PMP exam itself, social responsibility is integrated and it's role-based. Obviously, some of the exam has changed. 30% is the number being distributed, being published by PMI as the amount of the exam has changed. So 70% of the exam are the same questions, the same format, the exact same questions that would have existed prior to September 1. Only 30% has changed. And I called out it again because a lot of us are old, being a relative term, old practicing project managers. I think it should give us all confidence knowing that only 30% of the exam has been updated. The other 70% remains as PMI have been testing project management for years. And again, I think that's a consistent message. Project management hasn't changed wholesale. It has simply evolved. The big change is the integration, and the big change is it's now in 5 domains: initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing. And it is now based more on the day-to-day life of. So as I said in the introduction to this nugget, I think it makes the exam easier, and I think it makes the exam more relevant. So for those of you who have been concerned, again, I know I'm going to repeat myself, lose that concern, raise your confidence level that the exam is more relevant to what you do. How have the 30% exams changed? Well, some of the questions have been reworded to simply integrate the professionalism and the social responsibility. There are some brand new questions, and there have been some questions that have been retired. Basically, they looked at the question, they said, can I rejig this? Can I make it work to be consistent with the new approach to the exam, the role-based definition? No, this is more an academic, more a theoretical type question, so they simply retired it, and they brought in new questions. Again, repeating myself over and over again, don't stress about the new exam format. Don't worry about it. This Nugget series is going to prepare you to pass your exam in the old format and in the new format, and the new format should be easier, friendly, easier to get along with. So stop the stress and let's proceed and prepare ourselves to pass this exam. Which leaves us to focusing on passing the exam. We now know the exam has 5 domains. These domains are what we do every day as project managers. As project managers, we initiate the project. We kick the project off and we get it started. We work on the right projects. We make sure our projects are approved and that we have the commitment from the organization. Once we have the commitment from the organization to proceed, we then plan the project. We develop the scope statement, we develop the work breakdown structure, we develop the budget, we develop the schedule, etc., 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 and we plan the project for successful conclusion. With the plan approved, we then execute the project. The team starts to deliver the project components, and we, the project managers, support the team through their execution. And in parallel with that, as project managers, we monitor and control the project. We track our status, we track our variances, and we take corrective actions to keep the project on track to successful conclusion. And then finally, when the project is done, we close the project off. So nothing new in the exam. This is what we do every day. And here's how you can expect to see the distribution of the questions. So again, if you want to focus your attention on specific areas where you're going to have the highest impact or the highest likelihood of passing the exam, single biggest point of questions on the exam is in the executing. 30% of the questions you can expect to come from the executing component. Pretty close behind that is monitoring and control. Probably not a surprise that 55% of the exams on your PMP certification itself is going to be based on the executing and monitoring control. That's the biggest part of our projects. That's where the biggest amount of time, that's where the most challenges in project management are going to happen. So a little over 55% of all of the exam questions are going to be based in that area. But not far behind that is planning. If we don't do a good job of planning the project, if we don't define the appropriate scope statement and don't develop the appropriate work breakdown structure, and we don't put together the appropriate budget and schedule and human resource plan and risk management plan and communications planning and quality management planning and all of the other components of the PMBOK knowledge areas, we're not putting our project in the right